You are listening to the Paul McGUIRE Report. This is Paul McGUIRE. On today's program, I want to look at how can I communicate this to you. I want to look at the big picture, which we do a lot, the overall global comprehensive picture about what's going on planet Earth. Because after all, when all is said and done, you and I are living on planet Earth, or what the great inventor Buckminster Fuller called Spaceship Earth. We're living on Spaceship Earth. It's a planet. It has resources. It has oxygen that we can breathe. It has food. And this planet is our home, and this planet is spinning in space. And everything about this planet, when you examine the incredible, mind-blowing engineering that it took to put together Earth, the gravitational rhythms, the laws of nature, the laws of reproduction, and so on and so forth, there's no way that you can look at the complexity of all that is planet Earth and just say, wow, it's just an accident. No, it's so obvious. It should be so clear to every one of you. In fact, it should be crystal clear to every one of you that this planet, planet Earth, our very biological beings that we exist in, I mean, you just look or you contemplate for a few moments the complexity of every single human being, the neurological system, the heart, the arteries, the capillaries, the blood, the oxygenation of the blood, then the coding that has been placed in us, coding such as DNA, the double helix DNA, which is the master code, the master template for how we manifest ourselves, or how we are manifest in this present tense physical world reality. And I know that sounds a little complicated, and I don't mean it to sound complicated, but the bottom line is this: you and I are ultimately living on planet Earth. The reason we can live on planet Earth is that we indwell these very sophisticated, I call it the technology of God. Whenever you see in nature or mankind or in the universe vast complexity, vast engineering, it's obvious that whatever it is that has been invented is not the result of some kind of random chance situation. No, it's far more complex than that. Everything that you see in this physical dimension reality has come into being through, now just think about this for a moment. It has come into being through complex mathematical, numerical coding. So at one level in this creation that we live in, at one level, a very powerful level, before you see the manifestation of physical reality, you understand and you can see, if you have, for example, an electron microscope that's powerful enough, you can see and you can analyze and you can determine the specific mathematical, numerical frequencies that are the source code, if you will, that allows us to live in this reality, that creates this reality, and that creates every single one of us. Okay, now let's try to simplify it, but this is important that you hang in there, because knowledge is power, and when the light bulb finally goes off in your brain, you will have like what could be called a revelation type experience, or what some psychologists are now calling an aha moment. Aha! An aha moment is when you have a deep powerful insight or revelation concerning any particular thing. Now, I have in my life, there are things that you can do. Every one of us wants to live a life with the most productivity. Every one of us wants to live a life with maximum integrity, maximum fruitfulness, etc., etc. In order to live at that level, you can't just turn your brain over to this present chaotic social media, half insane. It reminds me, whenever I think about our culture in the last number of years, I'll tell you what I think of. When I start to meditate, and I'm not talking about meditation in the spiritual sense, I'm talking about meditation in the sense of seriously focusing in on thinking about things, processing things, thinking through things. Whenever I start to do that, a kind of subconscious symbol of that activity emerges in my mind. And what I think of, and it just kind of like pops into my mind and pops out, but I think of the Joker in probably the best of all the Batman movies. The guy who played the Joker, he was a famous actor, I forgot his name. He's no longer with us anymore, he died. But the guy who played the Joker in that famous Batman movie, he tapped into something through the creative act of acting, and which you don't really see very often. But that actor tapped into, I guess, what you could call the collective chaos of our time, or the collective madness of our time, because the Joker was the embodiment of the world that has gone, the world where people have run amok. They've gone crazy. And you and I live in that world. So how do we achieve what God has called us to achieve and be in this world? How can we be victorious in the obvious spiritual battle that we're involved in? And the first thing that we have to understand is who we are, what our purpose in life is, what our mission in life is, and how do we go about doing it. So, that's why knowledge is power and knowledge is important. The first thing that we have to understand is this. We live in what's called a holographic universe or a holographic world, or we could even say you and I live in what could be described as a holographic reality. That means that somewhere in some kind of unseen realm, and quantum physics tells us since the late 1800s that we live in a world right now that consists of anywhere between 13 and 15 different dimensions. So in this multidimensional world, there are entire dimensions which contain the spiritual meaning of life, which contain the actual source codes, the mathematical precise numbers that function as source codes for composing our reality both as individuals and our reality as in terms of this physical world. So there are multiple dimensions. Now, because we live in a holographic reality, it means that you and I, to a certain degree, function like holograms. Now, you've seen holograms. Sometimes they're embedded as a three-dimensional picture on a bank credit card. You know, you'll look at the bank credit card and there'll be this tiny square, usually with silver paint or whatever. And when you look at it, you notice that it's a three-dimensional image. It's a holographic image. Or you've seen displays either in store windows or electronics shops or whatever. You've seen displays of holograms. There will be actors or people or you know, little miniature robots or whatever, and they're not really there. You think they're placed on some kind of display table, but the fact of the matter is they're not really there. So if you were to reach out and attempt to grab one of these figures off the display table, it would be like your hand just is passing through nothing. Yet while your hand is passing through nothing, you understand that you're looking at something that is totally real. So how come you can't touch it? How come you can't pick it up? Well, the reason you can't touch it, the reason you can't pick it up is because you're looking at something, a physical image, a physical being or whatever that exists, its source code, its energy or whatever actually exists in another dimension outside of what you're looking at in the store display. And so what you're looking at in the store display are what are called holographic images. These images exist because they have a shape, a form. It's almost as if you can touch them, but in reality, they're nothing more than energetic projections from another world or another dimension or another technology. So a holograph is projecting lifelike images of people, of dogs, of cats, or whatever you want to make a hologram of. But the actual holographic images don't exist. They are nothing more than energy projections of light, a kind of energetic light force that is being beamed in from some other technology somewhere else. And as it's beamed into the technology, it begins to take the shape of whatever its original source code is. Perhaps the first movie that depicted on screen, in a big screen way, in a spectacular way, communicated the reality of holographic images was the Star Wars movie, especially the first breakthrough Star Wars feature film directed by George Lucas, and it blew everybody's mind and blew my mind. But in that movie there are several scenes where the heroes or heroines or whatever are in one particular location, or they're in one planet, or they're deep underground in a cave somewhere hiding from the enemy. Yet in another physical locations, like far, far, far away, in another location, there's some kind of battle, the proverbial battle between good and evil going on. So, in certain scenes in the Star Wars film, the hero or the heroine is desperately trying to communicate to the people in another physical location, and they have those two funny robots. I forgot their names. One's a tall robot that stands up erect, and the other looks like a half-baked dishwasher or something. I mean, I don't know what it looks like, but it's got wheels. And it's, what is it, R2-D2 or something. So anyway, when these robots are activated at the appropriate time, they save the day because they are built with the capacity to project a beam of light with information stored in their robot body. They're able to project a beam of light or a holographic image. And so the heroes and heroines are looking, at first it looks like dust and dirt, and all of a sudden, right before their eyes, as this shaft of light transforms itself, at first it's beaming out of the robot's body, metallic body, and then it begins to take a shape or a form, and then you see somebody who is totally composed of the energy emanating from the holographic beam of light in the robot, and then it transforms itself into an actual person that is talking to the hero and heroine. And you see a couple of these scenes, and what all of these scenes have in common is they're showing you the reality of a technology that had already been developed, but the public didn't yet know that this technology was already up and running. The filmmaker, George Lucas, was showing you that it is possible to beam a holographic projection and create lifelike images that can talk and move and have facial expressions and everything else. But if you were to reach out and touch them, it would be like passing your hand through thin air. There'd be nothing there. But in another dimension, there is something there, because a holographic image is being projected from another dimension. And it transforms itself into a character, into a replication of a message or a video relay of some kind of danger that they need to protect themselves from. So our society and the global society, through the Lucasfilm franchise, feature film franchise called Star Wars, was introduced to holographic technology and many other futuristic technologies. Okay, so bottom line is, quantum physics, beginning in the 1800s, revealed to mankind through science that every single one of us are ultimately nothing more than a frequency. So every person you know, including yourself, every person you meet, the bottom line is you and I are a specific EMF, electromagnetic frequency. And every one of us are not only a specific EMF or electromagnetic frequency, every one of us are being projected from another dimension. There's some kind of intelligence. I believe, and many of you believe, that this some kind of intelligence is really a revealing of the highest level of intelligence in all creation and in all the universe, and that would be the omniscient God, or the all-knowing God, the creator, capital C, of heaven and earth. So ultimately, where all life comes from, where all the source codes originally come from, like DNA, where the specific numerical frequencies come from, and how the specific numerical electromagnetic frequencies are beamed from another dimension into our physical 3D dimension. And then they materialize and form the uniqueness, which is us. But the bottom line is, you and I, in the sum total of who we are in finality nothing more than an electromagnetic frequency being projected from another dimension. And so everything you see in this world is a specific electromagnetic frequency. So for example, I have this cup of coffee, okay? The ceramic cup that exists also represents a specific numerical frequency. The cup that I can hold and touch in this physical world that has a physical shape, this coffee cup, is the projection of a specific numerical frequency. The coffee inside of it, better not do that right now, the coffee inside of it is also the projection of a specific numerical electromagnetic frequency. So everything is frequency. Albert Einstein, the great physicist, said that. Many other physicists have said that frequency is everything. We're frequencies. The Earth is a frequency. In fact, planet Earth, and I spend a great deal of time studying this and researching this, but planet Earth that we live on is a specific electromagnetic frequency that didn't come about through random chance. It's a specific electromagnetic frequency that came about through the projection of a specific numerical electromagnetic field energy. Okay? Now, every single, oh, by the way, and in addition to that, in addition to the specific numerical electromagnetic frequency of the Earth, which allows it to exist in its physical form, the Earth itself is always generating. The Earth itself is always emanating. The Earth itself is always generating a specific numerical electromagnetic frequency. And that specific electromagnetic frequency that the Earth, planet Earth that we live on, is always generating is 6.83 Hz, which means 6.83 hertz. And scientists and biologists and psychologists and a whole wide spectrum of scientific researchers and scientists have discovered that when we as human beings are receiving or being bathed in the specific electromagnetic frequency of the Earth, which is 6.83 hertz, that's what, see, they don't acknowledge the Creator, so they may call it source, or they'll call it nothing, but they have a real mental problem, and I don't mean it as a put down, because their internal bias, their internal prejudice about the final reality of the world in which we live in, their bias, their deep, deep inside core internal bias is prohibiting them from perceiving reality correctly and accurately. In other words, to cut to the chase, their internal prejudice and bias against the reality of God's existence, and yes, He does exist, it's like a no-brainer, but because they have an internal bias against God's existence, they cannot acknowledge the obvious, which is that all these specific numerical frequencies or electromagnetic frequencies that can be used for evil or used for good didn't come from chaos or random chance or some accidental collision. All of these specific numerical electromagnetic frequencies came from a super intelligent being, the Supreme Being, God Almighty, who is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so God, who is the omnipotent creator, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, sovereignly chose, because he is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, he sovereignly chose to use certain subatomic elements to create the world and to create mankind and to create the earth. And the way that the sovereign God chose in his omnipotence, he chose to form and shape everything that we see. It comes from a projection at a specific numerical frequency. And so every man, every woman is the numerical projection of a specific electromagnetic frequency. Now this is mind-blowing. And scientists are heavily pursuing this, because what I've just shared with you is just the initial key on locking the door. Once you turn the lock with the key and unlock the door, then you step into the vibrant, infinite world that exists when you choose to walk through the doorway of truth. Jesus said these words, and he wasn't playing when he said the words. He said, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Whoever hears me," or whoever pays attention to the fact that I am knocking on the door. Well, who's knocking at the door, for crying out loud? The person that's knocking at the door is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the Supreme Being, the Creator, capital C, of the universe. If you will, the great I Am is knocking at the door.